Hey, what's going on? It's Quinn David Furness. Welcome to my show. Quinn David Furness presents the Beantown podcast for Friday, October 21st, 2022. What's going on? How are you? What's happening? My name is Quinn, and this is my show. I am the producer, writer, copywriter, editor, all that good stuff of the Beantown podcast, now streaming across Beantown networks. And I was thinking the other day, because I was actually on beantownpodcast.com as we're getting ready for some merch drops in the near future here. I promise it's on my mind. It's not ready to go yet, but we put out design. In case you missed it, we put out our second design. You could probably find it still on my personal Facebook page. I'll try to put it on the website as well, but it's we're going to have some T-shirts coming just in time for the holidays, I'm hoping. But I did not forget about our Right on Cue news segments. We haven't had a new episode since maybe August or something like that, but I promise it's going to come back. It's just podcast is not the top thing in my life right now, but I keep it going. And this is episode 249 for you all the fans. We are one episode away, 1 week away from hitting the 250,000 mark. Can you imagine in 15 years or whatever, when I'm in my early 40s and we have the 1,000th Beantown podcast extravaganza? It's going to be crazy. Me and my two listeners are going to go nuts. Listener discretion is advised when you're listening to the Beantown podcast. Number one was podcast objectively terrible. Number two, will occasionally some foul language. I think I got that mixed up. That's okay. Hello to my friends in Pakistan. A quick Pakistan story. Maybe you know him. My friend Mehdi, who I went to college with, we were... he was an orientation leader the year before I was an orientation leader. But then a couple of my friends who were orientation leaders were his roommates for like a year, I think. And I just kind of met him through them, and we're still connected on social media and stuff. Shout out to Mehdi. He's a flight attendant for American, I think. I hope I'm not messing that up. But I don't know if his Instagram's private or not, but last night or like yesterday into the day before, I think, he was in Pakistan, which might be where his family is originally from. I don't really know. I'm not sure why he's there. I don't talk to him that much. But he's a good guy. I had my first ever alcoholic beverage in his apartment, believe it or not. A tequila sunrise without the, whatever the third thing is, the kind of flashy extra part, grenadine. Is that what goes in a tequila sunrise? It's basically a screwdriver, but with tequila. He was he's maybe still in Pakistan. He was supposed to have some sort of dinky little hour-and-a-half flight in-country, domestic, and instead had to drive. And I think he said on his Instagram is a difference of like an hour-and-a-half flight versus 14 hours driving. Because it's just, he's in like, you look at a map of Pakistan and, you know, when most people think of Pakistan, they think of like India and Afghanistan and kind of down around the Indian Ocean there. But you go all the way up to the tiny little finger at the top, you get around like your Tajikistans and your Kyrgyzstans and your Turkmenistans and your Chinas. It is just giant mountains. What do they call it? The Hindu Kush. And just, really beautiful, but also extremely rugged. And I commented on his, video the other day. I was like, looks a little remote. And he said, it's a little remote. But he took some sort of 14-hour road trip through the Hindu Kush of Pakistan and is, somewhere on the crazy border of like Pakistan and Tajikistan. I don't even know if those two border. Let's pull up a map real quick. The map heads will love this. Let's see. So you get up to Islamabad, which is way up north in the Kashmir region. Good Led Zeppelin song. It looks like it just barely gets cut off, although I feel like this is one of those things where, because it's in the dotted lines on Google Maps, so all this stuff is kind of disputed. It looks like Afghanistan claims to be touching China, which, speaking of China, you ever look at Western China? It's just crazy. It's literally like Canada. We know China, we know how many people are there, but there's also just like this gigantic expanse of land that's kind of mountainous It's just the whole western part of China. It's like the middle of Australia. There's literally nothing there. It's crazy. But back to Pakistan. It looks like Afghanistan claims to cut it off. So Pakistan doesn't actually border Tajikistan, but it's very close. I mean, this must be some sort of mountain valley or something. It can't be more than 10 miles. That Afghanistan has this tiny little finger going through there. Anyways, good stuff. You got to check it out on a map. This stuff is crazy remote and beautiful. We're going to do two things on the show today, and it's not going to be a terribly long episode. We're going to check in on our Real Housewives for the first time, and I'm going to try to do better about what we've always done, which is check in on them every week. We have 3 episodes of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City that we have not touched upon. They are airing Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. currently. I don't know if that's going to change because Beverly Hills ends this upcoming Wednesday. But I don't know. We'll see. And then we're going to do a quick segment. Just one of those segments where I just had some things written down in my phone, and I kind of got to a point collectively where it's like there's enough for a segment there, so let's put it out there. I think it was a lot of like driving thoughts when I was on my road trip in Minneapolis and Wisconsin and Illinois about 3 to 4 weeks ago. And that segment's gonna be called Things I Love. And before we go any further, I mentioned to Rachel before she left for the gym a couple minutes ago that we were going to be doing this segment. She says, I better be on there. And I said, yes, absolutely. You're number one. You're featured, of course. So I'll give you a little, we'll just do number one right now. It's my hot GF Rachie. And I think she'll appreciate that shout out. But back to Real Housewives. So I'm not going off of any notes here. I'm just, which is maybe a mistake. I'm just going to kind of, let's set the scene for season 3 here. By the way, we got a glass of Canadian whiskey and a Sam Adams Boston Lager. And we're having wine after this. So I'm really hitting all 3. I was really, normally I would just go for the whiskey and save the beer. But I was really in a brewery mood. I think ever since, 2 weeks ago, I went... 2 weeks ago, it was crazy. It was before that YouTube stream we did. I went to a new brewery by myself because Rachel was gone. So I had an open Friday night, which is like happens like once or twice a year, honestly, or it feels like that. And so I went to Burning Bush Brewery, which is like a 2-mile walk from here. And it's one of those things where I hadn't eaten much, and I had like 3 beers, so it wasn't completely slosh, but I was starting to feel a little jolly. And ever since then, excuse me, and just this fall in general, I've been drinking more beer than I should. And it is what it is. I'm just trying to enjoy it. I'm not just sitting there on a random Tuesday night just like throwing back 3 beers just because it's fun. I'm like trying to try new things, go to breweries. I love those vibes. But I did that, and ever since then, I've just been in a brewery mood. I'm literally thinking tomorrow, like we're taking the dog to a pumpkin patch. And I'm already thinking, like, is there a brewery nearby? Which I don't know if there is. I don't know which patch we're going to. These things are all up in the air. I'm also, before we dive into Real Housewives here, I'm also still on the tail end of this sickness. We recorded last Sunday, and I was right smack dab in the middle of it. We had just gotten back from New York. It was a long travel day. I'm feeling, mentally I'm pretty much good, but I'm still blowing my nose a little bit, and we're still getting like, it's not just like the clear stuff. We're getting some chunks coming out, and I'm actually about to do that for a hot second. I'm going to pause, and I'm going to come right back. That was a good blow. And it's one of those things, I've especially noticed it today. I only had, I guess, like 2 calls basically, but, it starts to affect your like ability to talk and enunciate clearly because you're just like it feels like you're 2 miles inside your own head. But I think my colds last a week. I came down with this one like I knew it was coming when I was flying to New York last Thursday night, and this is 8 days later. So I'm like, this is okay. What's compounded it, and we talked about this last week, was the headaches I'm having after the dental work. But it's very slow progress, but I know it's getting better. It's definitely in better shape than it was, but it's not 100%, nor is it close to 100% yet, which is frustrating. But it is what it is. Trying to get off pills, for sure. But last week was a lower energy episode, which sometimes that happens on the Beantown podcast. Thanks for sticking with it. And I hope you learned something about Togo. And in the similar vein, there was a question about this sled dog has his own statue in Central Park today on Jeopardy. And we nailed that. Rachel's gotten into Jeopardy last couple weeks. And we've been watching it together. It's a lot of fun. She'll get some right. I'll get some right. And neither one of us got Final Jeopardy today, but I nailed Final Jeopardy yesterday, which will just give you the clue live on air. Then we'll talk Housewives, I promise. It was a very straightforward question. It was just international borders. And it was, if you know Asian geography, it was pretty straightforward. But because there's two obvious ones and then one kind of, you got to use your head a little bit. But it was name two of the three countries that share land borders with both China and Russia. So again, it was name two of the three, so there's three total countries in the world that share land borders with both China and Russia. Okay, so there's a question. If you need more time, pause the show. But I'll tell you, the obvious one is Mongolia. Like, that's what Mongolia is known for. For me, the other obvious one was North Korea. Even though it's a very short border, North Korea and Russia, it's just kind of like, once you learn that fact, you just kind of know it. You know, it's like, I don't know, 100 miles from Vladivostok or something. I don't think there's a lot going on out there around that border. But, you know, it is what it is. And then the third one, I got it. And then I was starting to, like, get too far into my head. I knew I had the question right. I would have put Mongolia, North Korea if I was at the lecture. But I was like, I'm pretty sure Kazakhstan does, because I'm pretty sure like Kazakhstan and Mongolia almost touch. And that would mean that, you know, it's you know, locked in. Speaking of this almost touch thing, and then we're going to be done with maps today, I promise. They literally are, as the crow flies, about 30 miles from touching. That's crazy. Russia and China just barely seal them off. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's Kazakhstan because Kazakhstan is huge. But then I was like, maybe it gets cut off in the southeast by like Tajikistan, and that's actually what it is. Or Uzbekistan actually is what I was saying, but not to be. So again, your three answers are Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and North Korea. Okay. Let's jump into Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and I'm not gonna go on and on and on about this because I'm going off the top of my head from what I remember. To recap where we left off at the end of season 2, there were 7 housewives of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City in season 2. There were 6 in season 1. So going back all the way to season 1. Just so we're all on the same page, so remember who we're talking about here, because I recognize that everyone watches the show like I do, so I'm trying to paint a picture for you. So you have, let's see, where do we start? We'll start with the brunettes. You have Meredith Marks. She has a lot of Botox, and each season it's just getting more and more to where you can't tell her, you know, how she's feeling based off of the faces she makes. She is an alum, an attorney alum of Loyola Law here in Chicago. She is known for her kind of droning voice, and her catchphrase is basically, I'm disengaging from this conversation and from the drama. And her husband is Seth Marks, and he's kind of a creep. And they kind of go back and forth on whether they're together or not. But nowadays, by the time you get to season 3, they're pretty much together. They have a son, Brooks, and another daughter and stuff. But Brooks was on the show a lot in season 1, season 2. And he's going to finally be on episode 4 of season 3. That's Meredith Marks. Then you have Lisa Barlow. She is like, 5'5", 85 pounds, and drinks a lot of Diet Coke, claims that she only eats fast food. It's hard to believe because she's skinny, crazy skinny. She has 2 sons. They have their own, product/brand called Fresh Wolf. It's basically like Axe for young boys. They're like teenagers, One's in high school, one's probably in middle school. Her husband is John. He's adopted. He seems like easily the best husband out of this bunch, I think, personally. Okay, then you have the one that gets the headlines, Miss Jen Shah, who is Tongan and very kind of scary looking at times. It has some very wild fashion. She's known for her Shah Squad, which are her, quote, assistants who have mostly now been indicted and charged and taken plea deals in this whole Jen Shah case. And she's married to Sharif Shah, who is the defensive backs coach at the University of Utah, which is just funny to me because every single time I check in on a Utah game, they give up like 42 points. And it's like, is this just what the Pac-12 is, or is Sharif Shah like low-key a terrible defensive backs coach? He's also an attorney. Okay, then you have the two blondes. You have Heather Gay, whose main storyline throughout the last 2 years has basically been she used to be Mormon, and now she's not, and she's dealing with those feelings. She has a couple daughters. Her oldest one was like applying to colleges and getting into colleges last season, season 2. Now she's away at college. Heather has never had a romantic interest of any sort shown on camera through 2 seasons and 3 episodes. She had a date with a guy named Big Daddy. It was like a group date, though, in season 2, and he was just so nice and so kind, and I think she was just really, like, horny on that date, and she was like, let's hook up internally, and that's not the vibes he was giving off. He was asking for, like, a water to drink, and she was, like, 3 tequila shots, and it just didn't work out. And then you have Whitney Rose, who had a original husband before the show started filming, and then she ended up sleeping with her boss, whatever his name is, Justin Rose, who's now her husband. She has like 3 kids. I think she's the youngest of the bunch. She's only in her like early to mid 30s, and she's kind of a train wreck. She's very kind, but just when she drinks, just has no like social understanding really, and says a lot of shit. So that's Whitney. Now those are kind of 5. In seasons 1 and 2, you might be asking, well, where's Mary Cosby? Where's the lady who married her grandfather? She's gone now, and there was never any like big hurrah or something. Essentially what happened, she was in all of season 2. She just didn't come to the reunion taping, and now she's not on the show anymore. So there was one mention of her, I think in episode 1. I think it wasn't like the show mentioned her. It was like Heather said something about her or something, but she's just gone, which is tough. Mary, I think, is like a very terrible person and dangerous, but she provided a lot of comedic relief because she was just so just mentally like adrift. There would be like full-fledged conversations going on in a room with all the ladies, and then she would just be like doing something else, and you'd be like, Mary, are you like part of this group? What's going on? And she's terrible, but that would happen. And occasionally you'd get glimpses into one of her closets. She's just one of those people who's like head of the church and makes way too much money and has like 6 houses, and you're like, what? Something's not adding up with the taxes or something here. So rest in peace to Mary. Definitely miss her because this season there's only 5, and I could definitely use some of that just kind of, I guess I would call it like quiet chaos that she brings. She's just kind of nuts. And then finally, a final rest in peace to Jenny, who lasted 1 season. She was Vietnamese. They were really trying to branch out and get the diversity stuff going, and Mary's gone, and now Jenny's gone. Jenny said some very offensive Trump-related things. I don't even remember exactly what it was. She was kind of terrible. I wanted to like her at first. And her storyline last season was basically her husband, who's a physical therapist or a chiropractor, like wanted more kids, but she was already like 40-something and had 3 kids, and her youngest was already like 10 or something. And her husband, Dewey, was like, maybe we get a sister wife. It was just like a quick little soundbite, and that became her whole storyline. And she was just really, I hate to say this because she can't control it, but I just really couldn't stand her voice. It was like nails on the chalkboard to me. I don't know what it was about her exactly, but anytime she talked, even in the group, it was like she was really trying to like dig in and stick up for herself and establish herself, and she just had to be liked, had to be heard. And I just got really tired of it over the course of season 2. So I really do not miss Jenny at all. She was quietly fired in the off season, essentially. So we're back to 5. To start season 3 here, that catches you up. Again, we have Whitney, we have Heather, who are they just say we're cousins in the show, but they didn't find out until like the show started. So I'm thinking they're like third cousins, and they just used cousins as a colloquial term. So Whitney, Heather, Meredith, Lisa, and Jen, and Jen Shaw. We'll start there, I guess. So one of the greatest Housewives moments in history, season 2, the cameras were rolling essentially more or less while Jen Shaw got arrested. If you don't know the full story, I'm just going to leave that up to you to read about. But essentially, no one really understood what her business was, and more or less what she's doing is selling products over the phone, fake products, imaginary products, with her Shaw squad, including Stuart Smith, a.k.a. Stu Chains, her first assistant, who got a lot of airtime on seasons 1 and 2. She was selling products, and they were not, non-existent. They weren't delivered, whatever, primarily to elderly people. So the feds busted her for fraud, wire fraud, all that good stuff. I'm not an attorney. And over the course of the last couple of months, I guess leading up to the start of this show and while they were taping, more and more people because there's like 6 or 7 or something, including Jen and Stu Chains, who were indicted on this and arrested and all that stuff. They started to take the plea deals. It started to be, the group was getting smaller, and eventually Jen Shaw was the only one who had not taken a plea deal and was planning to take this to trial. So that's kind of where things pick up at the start of season 3. We've gone through the first 3 episodes, and she's still planning to go to trial. And to clue you in, in October of 2022, not when they're actually filming, but what's actually happening in real life right now, she has since taken a plea deal. She was the last one. It was the last day that she possibly could have taken it. Doesn't mean she's going to serve less time than she would if she would have gone to trial, almost certainly. But because she was the last one, she didn't have anything left to give them. I think Jen Shaw is still going to do at least I think she's going to get sentenced to 3 or 4 years, and then I think she's legit going to do at least 1.5 years to 2 years before she gets out for good behavior or whatever they do with that stuff. So I think her sentencing is soon. I think it's let's try to get they keep pushing this stuff back, which is frustrating to try to keep track of. Let's see when it was, because I thought it was early November or something. Let's see. Yep. The first article says it's her sentencing been postponed. Maybe it's not till March or something. Okay. Thursday, this was 4 weeks ago. The attorney filed a letter requesting Shaw's sentencing be moved from November 18th to December 15th due to scheduling conflict. Ironically, December 15th is Shaw's close friend Meredith Marks' birthday. Okay, so the latest update we have, so far as I can tell, is December 15th. Okay. And also, I think we mentioned this last week, but BravoCon was happening in New York City while we were there last weekend. And Andy Cohen basically said, without actually saying it, that Jen is fired, which is crazy. We are very likely seeing the last of Jen Shaw on our airwaves, at least in this platform. So savor it while you're watching it. So that's Jen Shaw. And episode 1, kind of the big thing was she threw a 51st birthday party for Sharif Shah, again, her husband, the football coach. There was a lot of dancing. It was kind of 20s themed, a lot of good fedoras. I told Rachel, I want that one. She said, no, you're crazy. So that's what episode 1 basically was. The other thing we really got to check in on, and we're almost done with this, I promise, is towards the end of season 2, there's a big girls trip, and I don't remember what was going on, but basically Lisa totally freaked out. She thought her mic was off. She was behind closed doors by herself, and she went totally ballistic, like absolutely nuclear on Meredith, who the perception has always been that they're close friends. And I think they both felt that they were close friends. And she just said some very nasty things about Meredith, mostly untrue. And that's kind of the tension, the drama that they're coasting on going into season 3 here. And so throughout the first 3 episodes, the two of them are still working on that. It's definitely awkward. Lisa's not doing a great job at taking responsibility. Meredith is kind of being a pain in the ass. And now there's some retaliation going on. The next big drama happening is that they're on a girls' trip in Arizona, the 5 of them. And basically they're drumming up Meredith is drumming up rumors in her kind of snaky little way that Lisa has potentially performed sexual favors with people in power in order to promote her tequila brand, Vita Tequila, including potentially giving a blowjob in order to receive courtside tickets to a Utah Jazz game, which I don't really know how that fits into the whole promoting the tequila brand storyline, but that's something that's been said. And the next level of drama that came into this is that Meredith kind of shared that with Whitney. Whitney said she's also kind of heard it. But then basically, very late night in Arizona on the girls' trip, Whitney gets really drunk, as she often does. And she said something and then was like, well, yeah, Meredith told me. And then Meredith was like, I'm disengaging. And Lisa was freaking out. And then Whitney was like, well, Heather heard it too. And then Heather freaked out because Heather was like, I did not. And Whitney was like, no, you definitely did. And Heather was like, you are a liar. And so now Whitney and Heather, who are, again, cousins of some level and are like total besties in the show, things are icy between them, which is definitely like an unexpected twist that's not supposed to happen between those two. And it's amplified because there's only 5 girls to focus on. And so you got Jen Shaw with her own shit. You got Lisa and Meredith going they're in better shape right now. But then all you have left is Heather and Whitney. And so it's like, Heather Gay, Whitney Rose. Yeah. And it's like, wow, this is, the magnifying glass is on them. The microscope is on them. Other things to note, I guess there's not that much going on. We haven't really seen any beauty lab stuff from, Heather, which is what she's really known for. Whitney's going through some childhood abuse trauma, connecting with some relatives kind of stuff. We haven't really seen much of the husbands. We got them a little bit in episode 1 with Seth and John and Justin and Sharif and whoever else I'm missing. That's it. There's just 4 husbands. That's the thing, too. There's only 4 husbands on this show now. We won't get any more Dewey, and we won't get any more of whatever Mary Cosby's grandpa's name was, / husband, Robert, I think. Robert Cosby. Bob Cosby. And that's pretty much where we are. I believe the girls' trip is wrapping up. So we've had 3 episodes. The first one was a party. Next 2 were girls' trip in Arizona. I think the girls' trip is pretty much over. And that gets you caught up. Season 3 of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City airs Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Central. If you don't have a good link or if you don't pay for cable, you don't get Bravo, let me know, because I can usually find a pretty solid, consistent link. So I'll get that your way. This would be a good time to quickly hear from our sponsors before we wrap the show with things I love. It's a nice, tight episode. This is good for $249. Let's hope $250 can live up to the expectations. Maybe we'll have Tales from the Pumpkin Patch. When you need your home inspected in Central Oregon, guys, you got to call someone who's safe and certified, someone that you trust. Call the experts at Home Pride Oregon, 541-410-0316, or visit homeprideoregon.com. Call Steve. Tell him Quinn sent you. Use code QUINN at checkout for 0% off, limited time only. What's the catch? When God speaks. No, that's the microphone. Home Pride Oregon inspection perfection. This is what I get for not having my notes in front of me and relying on the Sam Adams, and I have to blow my nose again, but I'm not going to. It's that thing now that I mentioned 20 minutes ago where it's like hard to talk. Not because I'm just so congested, but there's just like stuff going on back there in the ear, nose, and throat. I can't really do much about it. It's okay for like day-to-day stuff. It's just harder to run a podcast like that. That's what I need to do. Unpleasant noises for 400, Alex. Also, our good friends at the Samson Q2U series. If you want crisp, clear audio quality, you got to trust the experts, trust God, and go to Samson.com, I think. I don't really know. I haven't really been there in a while. They've never responded. I've told them, like, hey, I would love to partner. I read your ads that I created on the show every day, and nothing. So maybe I'll reach out again. I just don't think they have much of, like, a customer service presence. Maybe it's just more of, like, one guy in a closet. I don't know. When God speaks, he uses a Samson. They've never even asked me about using that tagline. That's dynamite. An educated crowd would get it. And then finally, of course, our good friends, Cuts by Q. I actually gave myself a solid cut by Q today. Nothing crazy, but wanted to take care of some of the stuff on the back and, the sides a little bit, the neck shave, the nether regions, all that good stuff. When you need to fresh do something snappy new, call the experts at Cuts by Q. All right, we already mentioned our new segment here called Things I Love, that Rachel was number 1 on the list, but coming in number 2, and this is just kind of, these are my fleeting thoughts, fleeting, Fleeting. There's a lot of things I love in this world, but these were some things that I made note of, and I wanted you to know about it too. So this week's Beantown podcast call to action, I'm doing my drinks here. What are some things that you love? Email us. BeantownPodcast@yahoo.com. Again, that's Beantown Podcast@yahoo.com, or tweet at us at BeantownCast. I'm personally at White Buns with a Z. These can be things like, a hug from your grandma, or maybe smaller things like syrup, or even smaller things like half of the syrup you had before. I don't care. It's not things that Quinn thinks you should love. It's things that I love, okay? And that can be true for whomever you are. So go ahead and let us know. What are some things you love? I'll tell you, besides Rachie, other things I love. I mentioned I came up with this when I was driving, and this is very apparent with this first thing. When the interstate splits and there's a magical forest or patch of land in between. So you got your northbound interstate, your southbound interstate, or east versus west. And usually they're close to each other, right? But sometimes they split, they widen. There's a large gap between them for, I don't know, quarter mile, half a mile, 2 miles. It doesn't really matter. But sometimes you just get some wild space in there. And usually it's just kind of some trees or some shrubs or some grasses. But who knows? Maybe there's like a cool bird that lives in there, or maybe an underground cave system. Why did they split the highway in the first place? I don't know. Sometimes they'll have it where one of the directions is really high up, one of the other directions is really low. I don't know what's going on. I guess it just had to do with the topography. TOPOGRAPHY. But that's something I love. You're always looking over there to the left and you're thinking, I wonder what's going on in there. 2, I wonder how they're doing on that other side of the road because I can't see them. So that's one thing I love. A second thing I love, constellations. When I was in Wisconsin about 3 weeks ago with good friends of the show, Ryan Ligon and Kristen Austin English, I got that kind of backwards. That's okay. They won't mind. They don't listen to the show. I wish they did. Maybe they do. I don't know. Email me. Let me know. Tweet at me. Discord me. I talked to them on Discord. How cool is that? We were out taking their new pup for a walk, and we got some good constellation action. We saw the Little Dipper with Polaris, the North Star at the end of the handle, and really the only other constellation I know is Orion. But I love constellations, and I love to learn more about them. We had kind of this cool like constellation book growing up, and you get some light pollution in the Rockford area. Not too much that's overwhelming, but compared to Chicago, I can't see shit out here. I can look up and say, I think that's Sagittarius. I think that's Ursa Minor. Hey, that looks like Justin, but I don't actually know what it is because I can't see it. So I'm not an astronomer. I'm not an astrologer. I guess constellations are kind of the overlap of those two fields, right? Speaking of astrology, I had my last class that I teach on Thursday nights last night for the quarter. My TA was doing a warm-up game where you can't talk. The students can't talk, and you have to line up in order of your birthday. One end of the room goes January, other end goes December. And then after, we finish, she's like, okay, so raise your hand if you're Aquarius. Raise your hand if you're Cancer. Raise your hand if you're, the other ones, Aries. And she gets through all of them, and it's like, okay, that was fun. And the one she didn't announce was Pisces, which I don't know shit about astrology, but Pisces is the one I am. So I was like, dude, where's Pisces? And she was like, I don't know. And that's the whole story. So constellations number 2, we got 3 more. Number 3, and I don't know if there's I should have looked this up. Maybe you can let us know if there's an official term for this. I guess there is. There's like 3 different things you could call this. I think I know what it is. So I'm gonna call it. I wrote it down differently. I wrote it down as floodlights, but that's not the most accurate term. I think searchlights is what I would use. I love searchlights that advertise something, whatever it is, like a concert or a car sale, or in like Charlie Brown Christmas. There are the 2 searchlights going up in the sky. That's the key here. They got to go up in the sky. That's what I love about them. When they're at the tree farm or like Space Jam, there's the searchlights going on advertising the big game. You just don't see that very much. But I remember growing up as a kid, I could see out of my bedroom window. I guess that window looked north, I think. And sometimes in the far off distance, you'd see searchlights. 2 in the sky on a kind of a rhythmic pattern, a rotation, kind of going back and forth. And I would always wonder, like, what are they advertising? I was trying to think, like, what is up there? I have no idea. It'd be, like, way past the mall, I think. Like, way further north than that. I can't think of what there is on, like, the east side of the Rockford area that would be using searchlights. But I love searchlights. And there's a Scott Joplin rag called the Searchlight Rag, which I can't sing for you because I don't actually remember how it goes right now. But that's something you could listen to after the show here. And if I had a royalty-free, recording just lined up for you here, I would just play that. In fact, I'm going to. And if we get, DMCA'd here, that's okay. But that'll be our outro music. Okay, that's how we tie this back in. It all connects, unlike Lost, which was just, I don't know what that was. I got that queued up for you. I'm going to play that for you in about 5 minutes here. Our penultimate item and things I love. Small animal prints in the cement. So you pour new cement, and a week later, the average pedestrian, I think is what I said, is walking past, and you see some small animal prints, or any really kind of, animal print. Doesn't have to be small, but more frequently you're going to be small. You don't see a lot of moose tracks in the cement. But you're walking and you're seeing it in the cement, and it's, it's permanent now, and you're thinking, what animal was that? Was it a small, a pug or a shih tzu? Or was it a mongoose, or a baby coyote, or a bumblebee, or, a Blastoise? Or was it just a small-footed person? I saw a guy on the street today with a dog while I was walking to the grocery store. I'd never seen this. Sometimes you see that the dogs, their back legs don't work. So they got the little like wheelchair rolly thing. And that's perfectly normal. I've seen that. But this I had never seen before. The guy had some sort of leash contraption with a harness to where the dog was being walked. The dog was only using its front 2 feet, and basically its back hips were being held up by the leash. And so his legs are in the air. Like, imagine you're doing the wheelbarrow as, kids, the 2-man wheelbarrow. And the dog was just looking very happy, just walking. And so I don't know if those prints would look any different than if you just had a regular dog, but it could be that sort of beast, if you will. You never know what you're going to find. You got all sorts of crazy animals and critters here in Chicago. You got coyotes, you got squirrels, chipmunks, cardinals, Albert Pujols, Adam Wainwright, Chris Carpenter, Matt Carpenter, Yadier Molina, Jim Edmonds. He's pretty famous on Bravo these days. You never know what you're going to find. Our final thing that I love, and I added this today because I just saw it, and I think it's spooky and it's fun, using caution tape as a Halloween decoration. As in, there's some sort of spooky crime scene there. What kind of ghoul was murdered? What witch's brew is happening inside here? What's going to happen if I, go past the caution tape? Like, is there some sort of gargoyle that's going to come out and spook me? I don't know. You don't know. It's caution tape. Now, there's a difference. This is an interesting thing. The last thing I'll share on the show today. There's a difference between caution tape and police line do not cross tape. But they look exactly the same. They're both yellow with the black lettering. And so I implore you, IMPLORE, to really read between the lines. If it's police line do not cross, you got to let the boys in blue conduct their official business. But if you got caution tape, you can really go wherever you want. Just exercise caution. I love that phrase, exercise caution. Where else do you get to use exercise as a, there's got to be some official grammar term for this, right? But as a verb that has like a noun that's coming right after it. Usually you say like, oh, I'm going outside to exercise, or I didn't exercise today. But in this case, you get to say exercise caution. There's not, what other phrases could you say? I exercised, I guess you could exercise restraint or exercise good judgment. But I feel like exercise caution is probably the most common. Guys, that's what I got for you. Those are some things that I love. Again, you can let us know what are the things that you love in the comments. Thank you all for listening. You can find our show on Apple Podcast, SoundCloud. You can always, of course, go to Beantown Podcast Beantownpodcast.com and go to the right-hand side to see our most recent podcast. Like us, leave us a review, Stitcher, Castbox, wherever you find your podcast. I don't care. Spotify, we're on there. It's going to be an interesting weekend because Taylor Swift just released her 10th album last night. So seeing how the Beantown podcast stacks up against that will be interesting. Okay, so to play us out, we have the Scott Joplin Searchlight Rag. I don't know who played this or performed this. I want to give kudos to them. Oh, I'm looking. So I'm on YouTube, and it says this is pulled from Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, which I played a lot of as a kid. And one of the comments that's heavily upvoted says, Merry-Go-Round 1 looks too intense for me, which would be one of the things that one of your park guests would sort of say in their thought bubble as they turn around because they're wimps. So I don't know if this is going to sound like I'm just pulling this up, but this is the Searchlight Rag. And everyone, I hope that you are staying safe. I hope that you are staying sane. And I'll check in on you next time for episode 250. Bye.